Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must say I'm absolutely delighted to be here in Poland. I think every Brit at the moment would be quite delighted not to be in the UK right now. But particularly delighted to be at this ABSL conference. So obviously I do need to make a comment on Brexit. There's a new buzz term going around the UK at the moment, which is now regret. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I would like to say, please be gentle with us, because we are a nation, or certainly us Londoners, are a capital in mourning at the moment. So the day before the referendum, the National Outsourcing Association polled its membership base on the EU referendum question. And 88% of our members wanted to remain in. So as a context, what's happened is not really the want or the desire of the UK outsourcing industry. So really, really sad for us. Right, I have worked at the National Outsourcing Association for 15 years, and I can say there's been more change in the last 15 months than there has been in the last 15 years. And those changes are really dramatic. So we're going to discuss some of those today. I think Aruna from Capgemini did a really good job of setting the scene and talking about the change that we need to make. I, however, believe we're not changing quickly enough. So we run a satisfaction barometer amongst our membership base. And currently, on a scale of 1 to 10, our membership is 6.4 on that outsourcing satisfaction barometer. 2 years ago, we were 8.7. So I think we do need to change. I think the whole move towards a service economy is very, very positive opportunity for the outsourcing industry, but we need to do things differently, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'd like to now pass it over to my fellow panel members. What really are the main challenges and changes we're seeing right now? And if you can put them in a slightly prioritized order, that would be great. So Eric, if you'd open up.
So first, I think it is, in some ways, a really great time to be a service provider. There's more permission to try different things. But on the other hand, there are a lot of challenges. People expect a lot. I'd break it into sort of two segments. On the one hand is there's the existing work. And I think the challenges here are, one, automation, which we'll hear a lot more about throughout this event. And then second, sort of the integration of the business process and technology and different kind of core technology models, whereas I'd put automation as sort of a peripheral connected technology, but it's not the core technology. On the other hand is changes to potential to do new work, new types of services. This is where digital comes into being and kind of the promise of really transforming the business, consultative skills. Would also put kind of the general need for innovation. What am I getting that's more valuable than what I was getting in the past? And then cutting across both of these is really analytics, which is how do we make things as smart as possible, which touches almost anything related to the services.
Thanks, Eric. I'd agree with that landscape of changes, and I'm really keen to pick out automation. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of interest, but for me, as an advisor, I definitely agree with Kerry about the level of change we seem to be seeing in outsourcing and in shared services in the last 12 months. This is something about speed. So if I think back to Łódź 3 years ago at ABSL, RPA was not on the agenda. If I think back to Poznan 2 years ago, there were the first stirrings, there was something coming. And then last year, obviously, RPA and automation was a hot topic. But what we've seen happen in the last year is it's moved from discussion to implementation. We've seen many real implementations. I'd agree with Sean, our previous speaker, that there's an awful lot of hype around. But I think we've reached an inflection point where this is becoming mainstream just now, the last 6 months. And I've a few data points for that. I've got about 10 or 11 clients that I work with regularly, and they're all talking about RPA, and about half of them are now investing in it, and that's up in the last 12 months. But most interestingly, from my point of view as an advisor, is that we've started to see pricing in the outsourcing space be impacted by RPA. In other words, we see deals being signed now having much more aggressive efficiency targets, year-on-year savings. That's totally different to what's happened in the previous 10 or 15 years. So the majors in outsourcing are building RPA into their future commercial models, into the future pricing, and those who are not building it into their pricing now are not winning work. So this is suddenly, in the last 6 months, bursting into pricing, and I think that's going to impact the whole sourcing space.
So what we've heard from our members is that their service providers haven't brought automation to the table. So they've actually gone out and piloted automation themselves. What's your view? Are service providers being proactive enough on this?
It's a great question. I think definitely to date the track record has been poor. There's obvious challenges to a supplier whose revenues could be impacted or cannibalized by automation. So there's definitely a conflict of interest in terms of the legacy model. So it's back to change here. There's a need to align the incentivization of providers of all sorts with the interests of clients. So working out the right incentives, pricing model, transparency, governance to get RPA on the agenda. But definitely been a challenge to date. I think things are changing now because it is so front and center, and we start to see suppliers talking intelligently about the RPA opportunity. Some of them starting to have signed alliances with software providers. Others are investing in their own tools and technology. So I think this is changing very quickly, and next year we won't be talking about that.
I've been incredibly greedy and stolen 2 microphones.
I locate stuff.
So, Elias.
Well, I'm actually thinking, indeed, the impact of robotics is very significant, but there are a couple of things that are shaking up the business from a location viewpoint. And I'd like to distinguish between companies that have had shared services, GBS, whatever you call it, for a long time, and the new entrants. I think the companies that have been out there developing these models for 5 years and plus are struggling. I see them struggling. I see them struggling because indeed they are encouraged, as they have been, to develop higher value add services, which indeed they do. Now, does that lead to a problem? Indeed, because many of these centers have become quite significant in size. I'm talking 150, 200, 350, maybe even 500. And they would be located in cities like a Krakow, like a Budapest, Prague, a Poznan, cities that have been in the game for more than 10 years. So there's a significant war for talent, but the talent that they really need to foster their growth going forward is not always available. And that explains why the many centers of excellence that Sean referred to, we see many of them emerging in Western Europe where their talent is available in the business. So those that are around have locational challenges simply because they cannot find the talent. Now, what we also see is that the newcomers who are just starting finance or HR or IT, they have a different challenge because the number of locations is limited. They are driven out of the bigger cities because they cannot enter a pool of sharks. They've got no brand, no image, no history that they can capitalize on to attract a good talent. So they are going to the smaller cities of these world. And indeed, we've seen some popping up in Poland over the last couple of years. That's good. On top of that, what I also see is, if in the old days this was easy stuff, you could just look at Central Europe, many of our clients, both the new entrants and those that have been along here for a long time doing this, are actually taking a global view. It's not uncommon for us to have to compare Cebu in the Philippines with Penang in Malaysia, and indeed Poznan, a Gdansk, and a Debrecen. So I think what we're seeing today from a location viewpoint, fueled by automation, because we can get rid of the stupid stuff, companies need to move up the value chain, whether they're new or very experienced in doing this, and they face talent pool shortages or war for talent challenges. That's what we kind of see.
Yeah, I concur. Obviously, the number one issue in outsourcing today is talent. What's your views on the skill shortages, where they lie, what sort of skills are more required?
Well, I'd agree with the general premise that talent is a key issue. The thought that strikes me is that all the business cases and all the implementations we see of RPA in the last 6 months almost all of the implementations have been about releasing talent. So that's telling to me. It's not about driving cost, it is about driving value. Now this is one of the great cliches perhaps of thinking and talking about sourcing, but it really does seem to be true. It is about releasing talent for doing the smart stuff, doing the analysis. And I think there's another aspect to automation, the whole automation change that could be seen as threatening to teams out there, is that there's a great need here to an opportunity to take ownership of this automation agenda. It's not just about RPA, it's not just about BPMS workflow, it's about developing an ongoing enterprise-wide automation capability. There's a new function here that's about to be born, and that's really exciting for shared services, I think.
Just on the talent theme, I think it's critically important, and the whole reason why we call it services is there's humans involved, although maybe less or different because of the impact of technology. We spend a lot of time focusing on the hard skills. So you have this particular technical skill, this financial skill. I think the real challenge that business leaders, HR leaders in learning will face is a lot of it is what I call fairly simple soft skills that are important. So for example, we teach project management at sort of a really accelerated, super level, maybe become certified, but not to kind of just basic project management. We also don't have much focus at this point on how do you help people get context faster. Simple example I'll use is in Microsoft Office, you can have a spell check and you can have a grammar check, but there's no acronym check. Why don't we have an acronym check in Microsoft Office? When you join a new organization, you can figure out, am I using the right terminology? What does it mean? So I think there's a lot of things that are basically helping people learn how to apply the skills they have into a new situation that in some ways will deal with some of these talent issues. There's a big part of it. The hard skills are obviously there as well, but I think there's a lot of things that we're not spending time on that actually are the barrier to speed of helping people get productively quick doing new work.
Okay, so our latest research showed there was dissatisfaction with the professional development investments by their companies. And the main area where they felt there was a lack of development was in digital. So obviously a key part of this discussion is digitalization. If we're going towards a digital agenda and we don't have the skills, we're in crisis, aren't we?
Yes, but sort of everybody feels they're in crisis. So NASCOM in India, digital skills is one of their critical concerns. Lots of people trying to hire people in Silicon Valley, ad agencies. There's a whole bunch that are wrestling with the digital skills. So and this kind of goes to my point earlier about helping people change their mindset and change their skills. At one level, it'd be nice to kind of go find this pocket of really talented people that is under leveraged, and you can just kind of pull them in and turn them into whatever you want. The reality is a lot of how we're going to handle this is actually going to be evolving the people we have and slowly changing the talent models. There's not going to be some rapid program that just very quickly makes everybody much smarter, much more clever, much more contemporary. It is kind of a longer term battle, and everybody's not alone. There's not going to be a simple answer. In fact, actually, I'd say more broadly what we're facing is the barrier to progress at this point is less about technology, and it's more the humans. It used to be maybe storage was expensive, compute was storage, connections, telecom didn't connect, and basically now we're to the point where the humans can't change fast enough.
It's actually an area where I see some companies struggling. I mean, we all know that European heaven is where the police are British, the cooks are French, the lovers Italian, and the mechanics are German. And I see a lot of companies actually when they start looking at these soft skills, because this is about change of mentality, they are looking for skill sets that really align. And I'm not going to tell you what I really think here, but when you compare countries, some countries have a predisposition to have the right skill sets. And I will say that it's absolutely not bad here in Poland, but just do not assume because people have a degree and they speak English. I speak English, but I speak it badly. I'm Dutch. I was born that way, apologies for that. But it's not because they speak English or that they understand your processes that they can actually get the culture of your organization. And it is a question of what's the location, the cultural DNA. We did an analysis once. We tried to figure out why so many Scandinavian companies actually ended up in the North Shore of the Baltic countries, so the Tri-Balticon and North Shore of Poland. And when you look at some research that was done on cultural research, done by Geert Hofstede, another famous Dutchman, you can see that there's a correlation between power distance, extent of masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, in what you would find in the Polish culture and in some of the Scandinavian cultures, particularly the Swedish and the Danish one. So I think what you want to do as you go out there, I'm not saying that you should go for a location with cultural fit, but do understand the gap and work on it to cover it. It's coverable. We've got smart people all around the world, but don't just assume that they understand you because they speak English.
Okay, so there's numerous challenges. Have you guys got any advice on the changes you think people need to make and how quickly they need to make those? Give that to Eric.
I guess the first piece of advice I would have is it's actually a good time, I think, to be fairly bold. I think both the customers or users of service, I think the employees, people want something to be different. And even though automation in some ways is a threat, I think a lot of organizations have been surprised by how much parts of the organization have been willing to embrace it, and then once they get familiar with it, how that plays forward. And I think a similar thing plays out in other areas where you can, say in some of the digital agenda, you can test and try some things fairly quickly, see if it has value, and move on. So from an outsourcing perspective, historically, we have thought about these long-term deals, big upfront investments, and kind of once you do it, you kind of lock it in, and it's not very flexible. A lot of the newer things, whether it be automation, cloud, some of the digital things are much more changeable, and they throw some pricing models and other things into play. I think it actually encourages you and gives you much more flexibility to actually be bold and to try different things and not think about these long cycles anymore.
Just add to that, thanks, Eric. Well, I would suggest that there's a word that's been used in previous events. Innovation has been a buzzword of past events. And I think it's still important to use this word, above all, to think about innovation as a process. I think what's happening this year is there's so much innovative stuff. We're talking about the stuff, and the process is in the background. So I think it's really important for shared service organizations, GBS organizations, users of outsourcing, to think about innovation as something that can be managed, that's something that can be thought about and delivered, and not something that is just a bolt from the blue, random inspiration. So what does that mean? It means thinking about the framework you have for making innovation happen. What are the incentives you have? What is the governance you have? What are the contracts you have? What do they look like? So what's that framework look like? Secondly, think about your generation of demand and innovation ideas. So are you going to the right events? Are you going to ABSL? Are you listening to the market? Are you benchmarking? Are you bringing on new talent with new ideas? Are you creating a pipeline of new, insightful, relevant, up-to-date programs? And then finally, are you creating the right supply pipeline? Are you developing an organization that can actually deliver this? Are you developing an IT infrastructure that's agile and flexible enough to enable innovation to happen? So all of that together is don't lose sight of that as a process, I'd say.
Okay, same question to you, Elias. Advice for change?
I must say, when it comes down to innovation and driving that, we see it only at the top. At the top, meaning organizations that have been doing this for a decade or more. Actually, we worked for this company, and they wanted to start something really new because they're regenerating their application development maintenance functions. They were scattered, well, really, literally from Shannon to Vladivostok, and they were looking at what's the right environment to do this. Now, we all know that there are certain countries that claim to be the IT nirvana of Europe. I mean, Ireland has made that claim, Denmark has, Sweden has, Germany has, I think even my Dutch compatriots tried it for a time. Poland has, Romania has, and actually, after a long analysis of the innovation capabilities, combined with a strong technical prowess, because it's not about ideas, it's about ideas and making them work. And the company was looking for some combination of that with an attitude that would actually allow employees to cut corners. If you tell them, we want you to go from A to C, they would say, I'll go straight to C. And it's a story that actually happened in this country. They selected Poland. They did not go to Wrocław, did not go to Krakow. they went to Warsaw with this project simply because they saw a lot of gung-ho attitude in the Warsaw population, combining technical skills, but also a bit of an underdog position, because indeed Wrocław and Krakow, or even Gdansk today, are like very well developed cities for IT, and Warsaw, with its size, is slowly gathering speed, but a lot of momentum. So I think when it comes to innovation, again, I'm coming back to what I said earlier, look at the cultural aspect, look at the dynamics of the city, but above all, make sure you have got a good breeding ground, and that will drive you to the tier 1 cities, probably the tier 2 cities. That would be my point of view.
Okay. So what we're seeing is that data really is the new gold, and it's really understanding how to mine it and refine it is really where everything's at. And it needs to then be handled in a really customer-centric way. So customer centricity is a major buzzword. We're seeing new job titles appear called customer centricity managers, focusing on this, and that technology is merely just an enabler as long as it's done in a secure way. So are you guys seeing that sort of thing going on too?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the zeitgeist in a way is thinking about putting your customers first, and I think it's very close to it's a sort of focal point of many of these trends around automation, digitalization, Internet of Things, data mining, all coming together in making customer interaction richer and more powerful. My favourite example is in the UK police force, even in Somerset, was an analytics engine. There was a JV between the Bristol Police and an outsourcer that had been doing the back office stuff for many years in a perhaps unremarkable way, but they were able to use that data to generate real-time daily reports for officers in the police force to identify high-risk crime areas in the city and to preemptively patrol and minimise crime. So in terms of a customer or citizen outcome, that's really exciting how you're turning boring old sourcing into something as profound as that. I don't know how stronger impact you can have on people or their lives, reducing crime. So that's quite exciting. And yeah, we're seeing examples all over the place of where the old work of shared services or sourcing is being elevated by what's being made possible. So exciting times.
Okay. Did you want to build on that, Eric?
Yeah, so I think we're seeing the same thing. What I'd say is a lot of the analytics is contextual, so it's baked into different pockets of what's going on. There may have been a broad effort to build the data warehouse, to do some of the leading analytics, but it's not one analytics COE that sort of is smart on everything. It tends to be distributed into where you can have the context and understand how to unleash value.
Okay, I'd like you guys now to get your crystal balls out and say, where do you think we will be with these global megatrends by 2020? I'll go to you first, Elias.
We'll be quick or we'll be dead. I think that what we'll see is that the distinction between those who know and those who have not will become wider, both in companies and in locations. We had a plea at the executive breakfast this morning to invest, and even today, to invest more in education. That is the only way out. It's up or out. So I think because data, technology, interpretation, the robot, the crawlers, everybody will get them. There will be like shareware. And of course, who's going to program it? Well, we'll find some people in India to get that done for us. So I think it's really about mastering that and creating a distance. It ties into what I said. Locations tend to be saturated. The choices tend to be limited. So the smart guys and girls, the corporates, will move up. And those don't get it. They will just not get the right talent, because the talent will seek to be employed by leading companies. I'll leave it to that because we've got a few minutes left.
Okay. Paul?
That's a great summary. I don't know, I guess the question for me is around how automation will play out, how it will scale up. And still, where we are now, we're in a situation where we've got islands of implementation of RPA or cognitive software that have yet to join into continents. So it's actually slightly unclear about how far this pillar of delivery is going to grow. But my sense is that it is going to be significant, and that buyers of services or providers of service or GPS or shared service, they will see smart automation as a pillar of delivery in the same way as they do a shared service or offshore, for example. So I think that's going to happen. And it opens up a few interesting questions about the marketplace that we work in as shared service or outsourcers, around who's entitled to play, who's going to win in that space, because you can argue that actually automation is a loud call to bring work back in-house. It's to automate the work that's been pushed offshore, away from the business, and for the retained organisation to master its processes and automate itself. At the same time, you could say that automation is complex and technical, and you need a partner to help you roll it out. So I think we'll see a great tussle between those two ideas, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Eric, over to you.
So I think on automation right now, we're mainly talking about it as how does it make more efficient what we're already doing. I think by 2020, we'll see far more uses of where we're using technology tools to add new services, provide customization to customers that may not have been feasible in the past. And so it'll be less of a, hey, what work am I going to lose? And more, how do I actually use this to empower my business strategy to do more and different, where I don't have to sift through complex changes in legacy systems. I also think we will start to see some service providers getting to a point where they will have a critical mass of data sets, maybe anonymized and aggregated, plus algorithms, where literally the smartness that they have in, say, some of their procurement solutions, marketing solutions, risk, et cetera, that will be part of why they're selected, not necessarily, hey, do you have more people who can program the automation or enter the key punch. And so I think the basis of differentiation for service providers may become a lot more towards the analytics end.
Our vision for 2020 research shows there's going to be a whole new ecosystem of service providers and how they interact with each other. So there's going to be a lot more partnering, a lot more joint ventures, a lot more joint companies, and a whole focus on best of breed coming to the fore, which is a really great opportunity for the smaller service providers and players out there. We're also seeing a huge change in contracting models. So average contract length is more likely to be 3 years now, with a notice period of 3 months. And contracts are all moving to focus on outcomes from what we see. Paul, you seen that too?
Yeah, no, we are definitely. I recognise the shift from longer deal duration. 10 years ago, there were many 10-year deals out there, and you don't see those very often anymore, and we do see 3-year deals. I think it's important to flag the fact that in the picture we paint, or certainly I've been painting, and maybe the other panelists, is that we have to be brief here. The reality is the devil is in the detail, and there's a huge amount of variety in maturity, adoption of these innovative practices, of new types of contracting, depending on particularly the process that we're talking about. So a payroll, shared service operation or outsourcing deal will be very different in terms to an IT one or an IT storage one, for example. So there is a big picture, but I think we do see growing maturity. This is a maturing space that we're in. We're all getting smarter, hopefully. Speaking of myself, hopefully. And I think that means that providers of service, buyers of service, have more realistic expectations about how to make things happen. And in years gone by, there had been a buyer-seller relationship that was often quite dysfunctional, and I think now people are a little bit more realistic about what can be achieved and what needs to be done. At the same time, we see in the business world the ever-growing pressure of delivering more for less, or more for the same amount. So we see the drive to innovate continuing. So contracts is one area where we do see smarter working. We see far fewer train wrecks in this space of where things have gone badly wrong, which is great.
That's a good thing. Right, I think we're out of time. I think we're going to move over to questions from the floor, if that's correct.
Yes, it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, you had your chance as well to ask your questions. We have gathered them all, and I will ask some of them on your behalf from the stage. So let's start with this one. There are European countries, example Switzerland, Norway, with strong economies and banded cross-border transactions with EU countries. Why should anything change for Britain in terms of international business after Brexit? considering that many SSCs and BPOs are located outside the EU anyway, do we expect to see any impact of Brexit on the geographical allocation of shared services?
You would like me to take it? I was in London last week, and indeed in a different session, and everybody said, remain. So indeed, shocked, stirred, disappointed, as I drove to work and got the awful news. But then I thought about it. Wow, we're going to relocate a lot of companies out of London. And then I thought, no, that's not true. Because actually for shared services, this whole Brexit thing, it's not going to change. We had some analysis done, like any other company, we're planning for the future. We've got a lot of people in London, a lot of people on the continent. Little will change. It will cause a cost and a time for the UK, if they will proceed, of course, to get it all reorganized. But at the end of the day, in whose interest would it be to really shake up the economic ties? Now, if you want to do it via bilateral agreements, as opposed to EU agreements, that's fine. We do not expect really structural changes in the way companies do business. It will structurally affect the availability of finance. Everybody is very concerned about uncertainty, and now we've got a big uncertainty with us for at least the next 12 months. But we'll see how that pans out. But structurally speaking, the fundamentals about operating in the EU and the wider European area has not changed for companies. That's our point of view.
Can I just add to that? I agree. I think that's great analysis, and I think that will be the case, that long term there won't be major impact. I guess this is all prefaced with the hope and aspiration that rationalism prevails and that things can be clarified and the uncertainty ended, which I think will happen. And so I look to a situation in which I live and work in a Britain that is close to Europe, that has many European friends, has businesses that are massively integrated with Europe and the rest of the world. And in my work, last month I was working for clients in Oslo or Switzerland, and I wasn't thinking, goodness me, I'm going to have to leave the EU now to enter the European Economic Area. Absolutely not. People don't stop buying services, and I think it's in everyone's interest that a sensible way of working will happen. So that's my belief.
Thank you, and let's quickly proceed to the second one. Lack of skill aside, how would service providers deal with the trend of dialing back on outsourcing in favor of keeping crucial business functions in-house?
I can only say that we've done some research on backsourcing, and we're not seeing backsourcing be such a big trend as you'd read about in the media. And the few case studies of backsourcing that we've actually investigated haven't proven to be that successful. But that was just me filling a gap whilst these guys thought of an answer. So
I'd agree with that. We don't see a great deal of it, although I suggested earlier on that it could be a trend going forward. Where we do see it happening, typically it's where there's a change of leadership, a change of ideology, let's say, amongst senior stakeholders. Or in the past, we used to see it where things went wrong because of lack of skills or lack of expertise, and we don't see that happening so much anymore. I think looking forward in 5 years' time, as automation changes perhaps the structure of service delivery, then it's a different time. But in the next few years, I don't expect too much.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for all your questions as well. It's the first round of questions and answers. The second one will be followed later today. Thank you.